It was a special day for the Guy family, not only because it was Thanksgiving, but also because it was the day they were preparing to fulfill a dream they had been working toward for nearly 40 years. The air was full of holiday cheer as the Guy family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner on November 24, 2016, in Knoxville, Tennessee. Despite the significant changes ahead and the beginning of a phase of a new chapter in the family's life, the evening was calm and peaceful. There was an air of anticipation in the house as Lisa and Joel Sr. decided to finally leave their hard work behind and begin a well-deserved vacation. And the sudden arrival of Joel Jr., the day before the holiday, added another unexpected reason to celebrate. Their son's arrival didn't disrupt their plans that much, but looking at him, they realized that he was a little out of sorts and that something was wrong with him. Joel Jr. was a withdrawn man and rarely socialized with his family. When he lived in the house with his parents, the boy often sat in his room alone, didn't participate in conversations or family activities, and over time became aloof from the rest of the family. This did not cause him to be mistreated by his parents or the rest of the family. Everyone treated him well. Joel Jr. never worked. His parents paid for everything he needed and wanted. His parents were very attached to their son and tried to fulfill all of his wishes. This Thanksgiving, Joel Jr. showed up unannounced, and no one knew he would be joining the others at the holiday table. He had traveled nearly 10 hours from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he was attending school. This Thanksgiving, Joel's demeanor was unusual. He was thoughtful and silent. Even though the house was full of people, many of whom didn't socialize much with him, he didn't sit in his room. At the table, his half-sister Michelle decided to keep the conversation going. She remembered Joel talking and playing with his nieces and nephews, even giving them some of his childhood toys. However, despite socializing with his sister, the boy still remained thoughtful. About a month before Thanksgiving, Joel Sr. and Lisa announced their retirement during a family gathering. Everyone was celebrating and happy for the couple, everyone except Joel Jr. At some point during this gathering, Joel Jr. learned that he would no longer be living off his parents' bank account and would have to start supporting himself. Subtle details never came out, so it's impossible to say exactly how the conversation went or what Joel Jr.'s reaction was to the news that his parents were retiring. But soon, Joel Jr. will let the world know how he feels about this new change and circumstance in his life. On Saturday, November 26th, after Thanksgiving, Lisa Guy left the house to buy groceries and pet supplies. Upon returning home, she put the bags on the floor and went upstairs. Suddenly, she was attacked by her own son, Joel Jr., with a knife. Minutes before, while Lisa had been shopping, Joel had already committed the horrible crime of attacking his father in the exercise room on the second floor of the house. They fought for a long time, knocking over a heavy exercise machine. Joel Sr. died from the 40-plus blows he received right there, just a few feet from where Lisa found her end. Joel Jr. didn't just kill his parents, he set in motion an elaborate plan to get rid of the evidence and frame his father for the crime. He had passed the point of no return. There was no going back. In his diary, Joel wrote down his plans and details, which during the trial would be called the Book of Premeditated Crimes. After the death of his parents, the phase of his heinous plans entered a new stage. His original plan was to plant his mother's DNA on his father, as well as under his fingernails to make it look like a domestic dispute that ended tragically. The plan also included setting fire to the house to destroy evidence. The father's clothes were cut from his body and left near the crime scene, with 2 large knives lying nearby and a bloody pack of cigarettes on top of the pile of clothes. The mother's clothes were cut in the same manner. On Monday, Lisa didn't show up for work. This was uncharacteristic of her, especially since it was her last work week and coworkers were planning Lisa's retirement party. Her coworkers told investigators and also in court that there was no way she could have missed this event. It was completely atypical for her to not show up for work, and it was certainly odd that she didn't notify anyone, especially since there was a mini party planned at work in her honor. Her supervisor tried to contact her but couldn't and ended up calling the police, asking them to check Lisa's house. Investigators arrived on the scene and noticed that cars were parked in the driveway. A for sale sign was hanging in front of the house, and lights were on in the house. They looked inside and saw a pot on the stove, heard a dog barking, and even felt an unpleasant heat coming from the door and window. Something was not right. They decided that due to exigent circumstances, they needed to get into the house right away. They contacted the realtor, who confirmed that there should have been a box with a lock and keys to the house, but it was not there. On the realtor's recommendation, they checked the vehicles. As luck would have it, one vehicle had a working opener. The law enforcement officers pushed the button and entered the horrible house. They entered the kitchen through the garage. The pot on the stove was still boiling. Unbearable heat was rolling over them. They noticed that the groceries were still lying on the floor. Some of the food was fresh and in urgent need of refrigeration. Some was already starting to rot. The officers went upstairs, passing bloodstains on the floor and wall, and approaching the laundry room where they heard sounds. They looked toward the end of the hallway on the second floor and saw a pair of hands lying on the floor, and then realized they were at a crime scene. They went outside and immediately called CSI to the house. When those arrived, they immediately began collecting evidence and trying to figure out exactly what had happened and why. In the main bathroom, the experts found the rest of the pair of hands placed in 2 plastic containers. The only part that wasn't there was Lisa's head. The remains of Mrs. Guy's head were removed and carried down the stairs. It was placed in a pot on the stove and heated and left to simmer for several days. At the trial, the medical examiner testified that the head was not just severed but broken off. Investigators found numerous items that essentially told them the whole story. On the dining room table were wallets containing guns and cash. Containers of chemicals were in several rooms. Splatters and pools of blood were on almost every surface in the house. At approximately 3:30 p.m., the younger Joel was seen in the first aid section of the supermarket. He went there to get bandages and ointment for the wounds on his hands. He also bought isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. On Sunday, Joel Jr. returned to Baton Rouge to have his wounds treated at the student clinic, with the intention of going back a little later to finish cleaning his parents' house. He set a timer to send a text message from his mother's phone to his own phone so he'd have an alibi. Before he could return to Knoxville to complete his horrific plan, police had already become aware of the crimes, and the investigation was well underway. One of the items found in the house was a maroon backpack lying on the floor by the bed in the guest room. Inside the backpack were some seemingly innocuous items, such as a calculator and notepads. These were printouts of a diagram showing how the water heater worked, as well as a number of other notes. These notes combined together would be called the Book of Deliberate Actions. Joel had meticulously planned his heinous actions. The notes found later described every detail: how he would get rid of his parents, what items he would need, and his motives. This was not a spontaneous or random attack. Joel confessed, seeing his financial stability threatened, he decided on this terrible step. The family had many assets, and Lisa had a $500,000 life insurance policy, but that amount would have been paid out to her father. Therefore, Joel's plan involved not only killing Lisa, but also her husband to become the main beneficiary. He dreamed of living the free life he was so accustomed to. The East Baton Rouge County Sheriff's Department and the FBI cooperated and monitored Joel Jr. for several days after the bodies were discovered. It appears that he was completely unaware that his plan had been thwarted. On November 29th, Joel Guy Jr. was arrested as he was getting into his car. After being detained and searched, it became clear that he was planning to return to Knoxville, to his parents' home, to resume his plan and make the best of it. In the trunk of his car, investigators found a mixer with a meat grinder attachment. The same type of mixer and attachment he described in detail in his notes. Joel refused to cooperate with the investigation, eventually being transferred to Knox County, where he pleaded not guilty and filed a motion to act as his own attorney. He later said he wanted to represent himself so that he could then file a motion for the death penalty if he was found guilty. The judge told him that he would allow him to execute it if he hired attorneys, and Joel Jr. agreed. The prosecutor responded that the court had no plans to seek the death penalty, whether Joel wanted it or not. It was also discovered that almost immediately after this crime, Joel Jr. made large utility payments on his apartment complex and school, as he was heavily in debt at the time. The prosecutor responded that they would not seek the death penalty in court, whether Joel wanted it or not. On October 2, 2020, Joel Guy Jr. was found guilty on all counts. One charge was for the murder of Lisa and Joel Sr., and the other two were for theft. The judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole after 51 years, which was unlikely because if he is paroled after 51 years, he must begin serving his second life sentence immediately. He was also added another 4 years for body abuse. The earliest Joel Jr. can be paroled is in 2072. At that point, he will be 134 years old, which virtually guarantees that he will never be able to go free. Joel Guy Jr. remains incarcerated at the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex in Pikeville, Tennessee, where he will remain for the rest of his life. The story of the Guy family is a tragic example of how easily dreams of a better future can be shattered by harsh reality. We see how an upcoming vacation, a new stage of life, all of these plans crumbled in the heat of insane anger and lust for profit. Joel Jr., held hostage by his own ambition and fear of losing his wealth, committed an irreparable act. This tragedy reminds us how important it is to value our loved ones, cherish relationships, and remember that the real value of life is not measured in money. I recommend watching the other videos. Click right now and also subscribe to my channel. See you soon.